I picked up these great looking Ashley type bar stools from a garage sale. As you can see, they got damaged on the corners. But before I bought these chairs, I examined the construction to see if I could take these apart and reupholster it. Let me show you how I DIY'd the reupholstering on my bar stools and show you what to look for when buying a bar stool if you ever have to reupholster it in the future. Welcome. Well, I'm glad you made it back. Well, as you can see, these bar stools are a little wobbly. This is an easy fix. I'll show you how to do that later. But the bottom of the bar stools themselves look great. So I'm just going to go ahead and replace the back of the bar stools with a matching fabric. So let's get to work. Okay, let's turn this thing upside down and let's see what's going on underneath here. This is one of the things you want to look at when you're buying a bar stool. Can you unbolt the legs? If you unbolt it, it's really easy to disassemble. Some chairs have this dust cover. This one has a zipper. That's great. Let's see what's in there. As you can see here, we got bolts on each leg and we have the center one to hold the back in place. First, I start unscrewing the legs. You may have to use a socket or a Phillips screwdriver to remove the bolts. Mine, I have to use an Allen wrench. Okay, as you can see here, I'm unscrewing the back leg that attaches to the seat on each of the back legs only. We're only unscrewing the back legs. Okay, now I'm going to take my Phillips screw gun and I'm going to unscrew these supports. I'm only going to unscrew it where the support connects to the back leg. Do not unscrew the front legs. I made sure before I bought these bar stools that I would be able to take it apart, and this is another area you need to look at. Most bar stools, this part here is glued in, so you wouldn't be able to take it apart. Now, let's remove the center bolt. Another indicator that you'll be able to take it apart is if the bar stool is loose. If you remember, this bar stool was real loose and that told me that chances being I could take it apart. Now that we have all the fasteners removed, we can start to remove the back of the chair. As I'm loosening the back of the chair, I can feel the dowels in there. The dowels aren't glued in, so it's pretty easy to remove the back of the chair. All I'm doing is moving it side to side, back and forth, so it will come apart. Well, that was easy. You can see where it's attached with the two bolts for each leg, and the center bolt, and of course the two dowels that helps it set into position. On the seat side, you can see where the two dowels go in. Of course, the center hole where the bolt goes in, and two bolts for each leg. Now it's time to remove the staples. Now you can buy a special tool for this, or you may already have one. I myself don't, so I'm just using a pair of pliers, a pick, and a screwdriver. You can see how I kind of pick it out, shove the screwdriver, get it up a little high, and then take the pliers and remove the staple. Once you removed all the staples, what you're going to have is something like this. It'll be like a pillowcase. It'll be open on one side. That's the bottom where you removed all the staples. We're only going to remove one of the backs of the bar stools. That way we can make up a pattern. Now what you're going to need is a seam ripper. What we're going to do is we're going to separate the front panel from the back panel to get our patterns. Now just go around and use a seam ripper to disassemble the front panel from the back panel. Be careful not to rip the edge of the panel. That way you can make an accurate pattern. Now that you've seamed ripped all the stitches, what you're going to have left is two pieces, a front and a back. Now what you're going to need is some kind of pattern making material. I used some thin cardboard here. I just laid the pattern on top and just drew out the pattern and cut it out. Make sure you fold the pattern in half, that way you know for sure it's even on both sides. Since I'm only doing the back side of the chairs, I needed a fabric that was color coordinated with the bottom of the seat. And this is what I came up with. I'm just using a plain black marker. This pattern has some names of some cities, so what I'm trying to do is center up the name of the city right about here, as I'm centering up the fabric to the pattern. As you can see so far, we haven't used a lot of tools. We've used some really basic tools here, so you don't need any specialized tools. And in taking apart the back, you don't have to be a brain surgeon. Just some basic tools. Slip the back off. Separate the front to the back, and then mark your patterns up. It's pretty simple. All you're doing is copying what somebody else did. That's all. That's what makes it so easy. Now it's time to cut your fabric. Now this, to me, is so satisfying. I don't know why I love cutting fabric, especially thick fabric, with some good scissors. Anyway, again, this is really easy. Just cut the pattern. Now that we've taken off the pattern, now you can see what I meant about centering the city on the back of the fabric. Now we're going to do the same thing to the front panel. Again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and center up the city on the front panel. Now the next step is really easy, but it's kind of important. You want to put a center mark on the top of the fabric. Just fold it in half and mark it, or just take your pattern and just mark the center line from your pattern to the fabric. Do that to the front and back patterns. Alright, now we're past the halfway point. We're almost done. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take the patterns and lay them face to face. You're also going to want to center up the marks that you did, as shown. Okay, now we can start pinning it together. You want to start from the center lines or the marks that you made and start either using pins, or I use clips myself. To me, they're a lot easier. Plus, I don't poke myself in the finger. So I'm just adding clips all the way around the fabric. Again, start from the center and work your way around and down. You don't have to put any pins or clips on the bottom edge of the pattern. Remember, we're making sort of like a pillowcase. As you can see, the pattern doesn't align very well. Don't get nervous. You didn't do anything wrong. That's the way the pattern is. Just follow the line and you'll be all right. This curve area is a little tough, but just follow the line and you'll be okay. Okay, we got one side done. Let's start on the other side, doing the same thing. Okay, here's that curve again. Don't get nervous, just follow the line and you'll do just fine. When turning this curve, if your fabric starts to pucker, go ahead and just stretch it out and follow the line and you'll be okay. I've seen some upholsterers at this point will put a little triangle nip out of the fabric so it'll turn better. But you don't have to do that here. But if you need to, go ahead. It's not a big deal. Alright, our last clip. Alright, let's take a look at this. Got all our clips in, and as you can see, it looks like we're making a pillowcase. Now comes the fun part. Let's sew this thing together. Okay, make sure you get using the correct needle and make sure your tension is correct. On my machine, all I have to do is hit a couple of buttons and it's ready to go. All I'm doing now is sewing the 3 sides, and I'm using about a 3/8 seam. There's no real big secret here, it's just basic sewing. Can't wait to see how this looks. If you're new to sewing, or if you've sewed before and never sewed upholstery fabric, it's really not that difficult. It's some basic sewing and some basic stitches. If this looks intimidating to you, it's not, believe me. If you can sew a pillowcase, you can do this. Think about all the steps that I did so far. They weren't very hard. For some guys, they're a little intimidated by a sewing machine, but you ladies out there, I know you know how to sew. This is really simple. By the way, you guys out there, if you are intimidated by sewing, have your girlfriend or wife do it. Or your mom. Or your aunt. Or your grandma. Or your great-grandma. Or your great-great-grandma. Again, we're going around this radius, and all we're going to do is just follow the seam, and you'll be fine. You're going to get a little bit of puckering, but that's fine. If you get a lot of puckering, you'll probably have to take it apart and readjust it. That's no biggie. Just take your seam ripper, rip it up, and then just start where you left off. When you get to the end, make sure you put a lock stitch. That way it kind of locks the stitch in there so it doesn't come apart. Now, if you remember, I took one of the backs off so we can make patterns, and I've already reupholstered that one. I wanted to show you what you can do after you've done the first one. I've got 4 chairs, so obviously I want to cut 4 patterns, so I did the first one already. This is the second one. The neat part about doing the second one is you don't have to take off all the staples to remove that cover. What we're going to do is we're just going to reupholster it or recover it. So the last 3 are going to go real quick. See? I told you this was easy. Okay, let's slide the cover over. Go ahead and push down in it so we can get it nice and taut. Now usually I just lay it on the table and just stretch the fabric and put a staple. Now if you don't have a pneumatic gun, I suggest getting one of these electric staplers. They're pretty cheap, they're not very expensive. All I'm going to do is just staple it down just like the other one was. You can see how these are stapled down, so you're just copying what's there. It's pretty simple. Just make sure you don't have any fabric to block the screw or dowel from going into its proper hole. If you put a staple in and it sticks up, just hammer it down with your hammer. Now I'm using a utility knife to remove any fabric that's in the way of any of the holes that I need to access so the screws or bolts will go through. Here I'm just putting the screw in to make sure that I can screw it in when I assemble it. If I have any fabric in the way, there'll be a problem, so I just want to make sure that I have clearance. Great, now we're all stapled in. Now it's time to assemble it. But before we do, remember the chair was real wobbly when we first got it? The reason being, the bolts got loose. We need to tighten them up. So let's tighten those up. We're going to tighten the front ones first. This is going to be pretty easy because the back has dowels in it, so it'll help us align the back to the seat. Just put it together. Put the center screw in first. I'm glad they put this center screw in here. It kind of holds it all together as you're trying to put all the screws in. Makes it a lot easier. So when you're looking for a chair at a garage sale or a store, make sure you look underneath it, because if you ever in the future wanted to reupholster it, or maybe you saw some chairs that you would love to reupholster, that's what you want to look for. You don't want to make it hard on yourself. As you can see, I'm putting the 4 bolts in for the legs. Pretty self-explanatory. Just get them nice and tight. Not too tight, but just nice and snug. If your bar stool gets loose in the future, now you know what to do. Okay, now I'm just using a screw gun to put the screws into these 2 supports to the legs. As you can see here, I'm tying up the front supports here. Remember, they were loose? Okay, let's zip her up. And we're done. How's it look? Better yet, let's see how these chairs look in my bar. Oh my. From this to this. Well, I think it looks great. Did you notice the craps table? Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for putting up with me. Well, until next time, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Until then, we'll see you later. Bye.